This is episode 36 of The Rundown, which means for the past 35 weeks, we've been talking about things that we take for granted. Technology, access, artificial intelligence, connectivity. Tonight we want to talk about what we should have been talking about, and perhaps what we have been talking about all along, is what does it mean to live in a technological world when not everyone has equal access? Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night. Hello, welcome to The Rundown. Welcome to my amazing panel of friends. I'm going in reverse order today. I'm going with my good friend, Sky Gleason. Hello, Sky.
What?
I
David?
know, you're first.
Hi, David. I'm in the studio.
I
What
know.
do you think?
You
It's
look
raining
fantastic
outside
in
in
the
Seattle.
studio.
Go figure.
You look wonderful.
I know.
Although,
I
frankly,
do
Sky,
love my outdoor.
yeah, you look wonderful no matter where you are.
I pay you later. Venmo on your way.
And look who's back, Bill Davis. How are you, sir?
I am great. It's so nice to be back. I've missed you guys. I haven't been around in a few weeks, and I'm sad about that.
It is good to have you back. I love having you here for these conversations. It's just fantastic.
Thank you, David.
And let's also say a warm welcome to Mr. Dave Troutman. Hello, Dave.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm feeling pretty good, and it is warm. So summer has finally arrived in the north.
It's warm everywhere, apparently. New
Well,
York,
not as warm as you guys. No,
Northeast.
you're not going to see 100 here. That's for sure.
Yeah, all right, we'll take it. Lois is taking the night off, but you know who isn't taking the night off? Mr. Tony Mobley. He's right here with us. Hello, Tony.
Hello, David. I'm happy to be here and happy to be a part of this panel.
Good to see you. How was the show last night? I didn't catch the whole thing.
I can't be objective about the show from my own personal point of view. I think it was a fabulous show. I think that more people need to watch the show, not so much for anything that I contribute, but my guess is a person who is definitely outside of the box.
Yeah.
And she initiated the program at Morehouse for a digital campus. And not only, by trade, she is a chemistry professor. And she was doing chemistry lessons with her students 3 years ago. And they have now brought it full circle to any discipline where you can actually use virtual reality. It was just an amazing conversation.
That's fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful. Everyone, check that out. ConversationswithTonyMobley.com, yes?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And on YouTube.
And on YouTube, of course. Let's say hello to Tamara. Hey, Tamara.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. How are you doing today?
I am good. I'm not in too hot of weather. We're in a desert, so it's hot, but not humid.
Well, there you
So,
go. A dry
Very excited
heat.
about that.
A dry,
dry
heat.
heat.
We're not going to waste any
Which-
time. We're jumping right into the news. So,
Catch me dancing, then you turn the music on.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just get so excited. I get so excited. That, by the way, that is why I have so many Stream Decks in my office, so that I can spread the buttons out so that nothing is next to anything else, so I don't press the wrong button. All right. A fair use for AI. So this week we have what are you holding up, Sky?
I have my Stream Deck. I just don't have it plugged in.
Oh. Well, you're missing out, my friend. You're
I
missing
know.
out.
I dance when you click me.
So this was a big week for Anthropic. There was a ruling in a case that Anthropic has been battling, a trial over damages, and there's both a win and I don't know if we want to call it a loss. It might actually be two wins, or it might be actually a loss and a win. Tamara's going to decide this one, I have a feeling. So the win for AI, at least, was that books that Anthropic used to train their LLM they were used as fair use under copyright law. When the books that Anthropic purchased and used, the books that they used that were pirated, I have no idea if they knew they were pirated or not. That's neither here nor there. Books that they used that were pirated, they are responsible for, and they were held accountable for that. So, I guess a win for AI and being able and not being sued for using works that people have put out there into the world. What do you make of this? Am I wrong, Tamara? This is not a win?
So this is kind of how it goes, right? So you can go all the way back. I did some research on silent films, and one of the things that was so interesting digging into the deep research were the having to go back and get the rights again for talkie films of IP you already owned. So they thought they owned it and then they had to go back and get it. And we saw the same thing with the internet. People just went to publish stuff online and then they were like, actually, we're not supposed to do that. So this is kind of the process of how we discover new things, because probably the start of it is engineers going, well, let's see what we can do. And they just use what they have. And then suddenly they're on the hook for, all of this stuff, because Anthropic started buying things after the fact, after they had already started training their models. So all that new stuff that they bought, that's fine. They're saying, well, you paid for it, so it's fine.
They started buying the pirated stuff. Is that that's where I was a little confused. It says that Anthropic. By the way, this is an article from AIFray.com. Anthropic later bought a copy of a book it earlier stole off the internet. Will not absolve it of liability for the theft, but it may affect the extent of statutory damages. So, what did they buy?
I feel, and I don't know 100%, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know. But I think what happened is once they got into it where they were like, oh, wait, we could be on hook for copyright stuff, they started making deals with publishers. And this is where writers do have a problem, because publishers made good deals with them and said, yeah, take my catalog. And it happens that some of the catalog they had already scraped off the internet and were already in their thing. So they're saying, look, we in good faith did it. We went and bought these things. So now it's going to be that trickiness of, yeah, but you used it first. And so what does that look like? And that'll be the part to discover. But probably like everything in these things, they started, engineers started training off of what they could have, what they could find. And then the legal team got in and said, let's do something else.
So I Am Fatness is writing on YouTube real quick. They stored millions of books in a central repository and claimed it wasn't used in the training. They are liable for possession. Go ahead, Sky.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask.
Go ahead, Sky.
I was going to ask Tamara to pull out her release form when you get an actor, because it will talk about, we own this thing from here to the end of the universe. It sounds absurd, but again, now that I've dealt with lawyers, and Graham Kerr said, oh yeah, their job is to look into the future, think of the worst thing that could possibly happen, and protect the client. So the real winners in all of this continuously will be the lawyers.
Yeah, my contracts, and I'm sure Bill has this too, they say everything from like video games to my favorite is amusement park rides. Like, you're going to use one of my episodes or one of the things I've done for amusement park rides. It's so specific. And every single time you run into any problem, then that's what continues to make it to be like an epic pages and pages of stuff that gets signed off on. But there was a time, like if you look at a lot of DVD series of shows that were from like the 80s, 90s, they have all new music because the music was not, they did not think to do it in perpetuity before they had this other medium. So now when you go into anything, they're like, we own this, or we're going to negotiate these rates for this medium and any medium to come in the future. So a lot of the stuff now is signed off in perpetuity.
So Aaron Husledge is watching and why is that so small? I'm going to try and make this bigger. Sorry. But and we're going to be coming back to you a number of times, I think, Aaron. So stick with us here. Hold on, let me make this comment a little bigger for us. And now it's gone. Come back. All right, here we go. So Aaron says, this is a bad decision on the face of it. AI use of a book is not like a human's use of a book. AI can't read. It's just a bunch of math. The AI, he says, can't forget a book either. So I'm actually gonna disagree with you, Aaron, and I'm not convinced that an AI accessing works on the internet is any different than any of us accessing works on the internet. We use and steal and borrow from things all the time. Sometimes we give attribution, sometimes we don't give attribution. I could imagine someone's work being left out of an AI training, and then somewhere down the road, them getting really, really frustrated that their work is not being recognized or it's not floating to the top when this AI is being asked questions. So I don't know.
Well, historically, we as artists, a prince or a king or somebody would bless you with a place to work and a wall to paint or something, and then all of a sudden, the intellectual property belonged to the king, to that authority person. And so what happened was in the last 250 years, that intellectual property is now owned by the artist. And I think that's where the lawyers have gotten in that middleman function. And consequently, historically, there were people that made music and they wanted to share with and have somebody else exploit and expand on their music. And so at least that's the podcast I listened to, was, stealing like an artist was expected and you wanted it to happen. So once it became a moneymaker, things get complicated. And how do you make a mortgage and pay your rent?
Yeah,
I think it's very different.
Tamara, give me 1 second. I cut Dave off before, and I want to.
I'm sorry.
Send it over to him. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
This reminds me of a couple of things, but the first short thing is that when you say the AI is reading this is not what's happening. The AI has turned it into the confetti of letters, and it's using every letter from every object in every book to guess what the next word is going to be. So that's what AI does. It guesses what the next word in a sentence should be. The other side of this was when Tamara was talking about the in perpetuity stuff. We encountered this with the Defense Department because they were using textbooks, which they had legally purchased and publishers gave them, of how aircraft fly, how radio works, and what the weather, how you determine clouds and all the rest. And then they went to do it digitally and put it in a database and found that they had to remake every picture. And so I had a whole crew, about 12 guys, who had textbooks beside them, and they redrew every picture that were going to be used in the lessons. And this had to be rewritten too. If there was any text, it had to come from the trainer, the colonel who was doing the teaching. But this was news to my young men who had just graduated, and they were all new graphics guys doing great work. And they couldn't figure out why are we redrawing this? It's right here. It's a better picture than I'm going to draw. And it was this whole thing of, no, you can't use that because there's this little C in the corner saying it's copyright to that publisher. So I have firsthand experience with this, but I think in the AI side, the last thing I'll say on this is we're mistaking AI for, what would you call it? Almost a room full of monkeys. It's just a machine that spits out probable correct answers, and the probability fails after 38 tries. But, the idea that the books were stolen is the important part here. And if they tried to cover it up, then what was said is that the damages are assessed according to how egregious this was. And so if they can be proven that majority of the work was bought and a portion of it was not, then that's all the court's going to decide. They're not going to decide the right or wrong of this. They're just going to tell you whether there really are damages. And that's really hard for artists to prove, because artists, put this stuff out there. A publisher loves it, makes it a little money for them and a little money for everybody else. And then it's just sitting on a shelf. And we can't say that when that book was finished being popular, anybody ever read it again.
Tamara, go ahead.
I think it's more complicated now because of the fact that, listen, when I write something, I wrote 2 scripts for Disney. I don't own that. I don't own it. They can do whatever they want with it. They can make books out of it. They can do anything they want. I sign my rights away. I'm not going to fight it because I want to work for them. So they can have it. I already know that. When I work for shows like that, I have to actually sign a disclosure of everything I'm currently working because, while I am under their employ, I could do the, tropical fish page and they would own that. So I have to declare ahead of time, these are the things that I'm working on because, while I'm employed by a major corporation like that, they own all the things that I do. So that is what you do if you want to work for a major corporation. Now, with this more of a creator economy, a lot more people own the rights to their work. It isn't quite, if you want to work for a big company, you sign your rights away. And it is similar to, we see it in the music field. That's why Taylor Swift has had trouble buying her things back, and she finally has them, and good for her. But that's what you do when you want to work for a big company, and they can do whatever they want with it. So if Disney wants to sell their database to AI or use it themselves to do it, they certainly can, and I don't have any say of that. So there's a lot of different, a lot of people are upset, and there's a reason to be upset, but most of us who are working in, with a corporate buyer, we don't own our work. we don't own our work, and we don't own our work, if we haven't declared it. And now there's ways around it. I could say, well, I'm writing a not untitled YA project that is this, and then suddenly one comes out that I happen to be working on at the same time, and it's covered because it's that way. Now, so I think that if you're working for big corporations, that is a regular part of your contracts. The contracts are long. You don't get to say anything, or you just don't have to work for them. And for me, I would much rather work for someone than not work for someone. So I think that it's different. It's different now that we have so many different kinds of creators. And so I know why people are upset, but if you worked for a major publisher and they sold your work, that's probably in your contract.
What bothers me after all the years that I've worked in this business is the landscape keeps shifting, and it keeps shifting in ways you can't prepare for. For me, I spent so much of my business career dealing with intellectual property issues, and it's almost impossible. And I kept thinking, so what is the value? The book gets sold for $17.95 from Knopf or something like that at Barnes and Noble. Then you finish reading it and you put it in your yard sale, and it goes to somebody else, and they bought it for $1.50. And if an aggregator comes in and buys a carload of those, they get them for a nickel, right? They don't care what the books are. And it was easy for all of those surveyors to do their large language models by bulk buying all this stuff and diminishing the value even further. Then you've got the intellectual property thing, and I think it's resulted in something that's really bothered me. There was a thread through most of my social groups of people who do content creation about the new TikTok terms of service that came out about a week ago or something like that. The language, the technical language in there is egregious to the point where literally you put anything, you put a picture of your grandmother or a little clip of your grandmother talking, and if you read strictly the terms of service for that video you've uploaded, now TikTok owns everything she has ever said, everything she will ever say for perpetuity in all markets anywhere on the planet. And it's easy to say, well, they'll never enforce something like that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, this is a global concern, and according to their terms of service, she is allowing them to do anything they want with her voice, her likeness, or whatever. And it's your grandmother. She has no idea this is happening. So It's always been a thicket. I do honestly believe that the law is lagging so far behind technology in these areas that we have no idea the ramifications of what is happening under our feet right now. And I'm a little annoyed by the whole thing.
Some of it is that we don't read the terms of service, though, because Instagram has had in their terms of service, I was teaching this to high schoolers like 10 or 12 years ago. It says, you own your content, but we may make money off of it if you translate what the jargon says. And so we don't read the terms of service, and then we agree to them because we weigh out, do I want to not be on this platform or be on this platform? And you're right, people are signing away so many things that they don't realize that they can make money off of anything that you put on Instagram. They don't own it, but they can make money off of it.
And as you've seen from viral videos on something like YouTube that go big, suddenly somebody who owns a little copyright piece of music somewhere comes in and sucks away all the profit from the creator who put the mashup together, simply because they have that through line of something that was not properly licensed. So it's just a mess.
Maybe the answer is to just not put up human-made videos anymore. Let's just put out AI videos. Everything can be AI created, and then no one can be taken advantage of. Right? This is what is this, Sky? This ran during the NBA Finals, and it's entirely AI.
A gentleman was able to put this together, and he actually gives the recipe, but it's all on the new Google video creation platform. Yeah, the VO3 platform. And he talked about it. It was actually, you're playing it off of an NPR news segment because it made the news. It was up again, as he says, it was in between the $400,000 spots, and it took him 2 days. But what I appreciated is in his recipe, he says, and it wasn't easy because it did take iteration after iteration after iteration. And I've been doing this for 15 years as a director. He said, yeah, I'm starting to play with Midjourney and creating a 30-second spot in 5-second increments. So Bill, you and I would be able, to cut it together in a minute. But I looked at some of the shots that I'm getting back, and I calculated that's $5,000. That's $5,000 because I'm thinking of the camera, the lights, the audio, all that. And yes, that I can do it now for, 50 cents. Like the economy is flipping in such rapid pace.
It's interesting to me. The last time that Michael Cioni was on Office Hours, I think just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this a little bit, and he's very, very smart about these things. And one of the things that he left me with, one of my takeaways from that conversation was, the shorter the content, the easier it is for AI to fool you into thinking that this is not a created generative work. As things get longer, the burden of hopping over the uncanny valley, if you will, gets taller and taller, and it's, I think, almost beyond logarithmic in how hard it is. So you'll see lots of small 30-second spots on lots of political ads and things like that are generative because they're short, and they can do thousands of iterations of each subset of the scenes and make them work together. Long form may take longer, and the longer it is, the longer it may take for AI to be able to fool people. So I'm starting to think, okay, if content is really short, I'm going to stop trusting it fast. Right. If content is sustainable over a half hour, like an interview program, I will be less suspect to that because AI isn't at the place where it can make that right easily.
It's not there yet. So
Right.
this made John Oliver's show last week. And apparently it's called AI slop, right? The fact that you go to Pinterest looking for inspiration about your garden, and all you see are AI garden pictures, and you get ads in NBA Finals that are now AI generated, and you get cat movies, and I mean, apparently it's just it's everywhere. It's everything everywhere all the time. And this is the new spam, this AI slop.
And it's going to get worse.
And it's going to
fast.
get worse.
Because everybody has the tool. I mean, once upon a time, in order to get to the TV station to learn how to cut a spot like Sky and I did, you had to talk your way into the TV station because the tools weren't available. Now, everybody with an iPhone, everybody with a laptop, everybody with those two tools can put together a commercial, and it's not a big problem.
And this is where the lawyers are going to be out of pocket because, again, Bill, you and I know what color correction is. You and I were introduced to Da Vinci as a tool to highlight the shadows, in understand what contrast is, and make a picture better. Well, now how many thousands of more people now are made aware of this as a need because the tools are being available to them? So the boats or the ships rising, to the tide of education is kind of like, I now know a lot more about beer because I've tasted a lot of different beers. I grew up on Coors. That's not a beer to be bragging about, but I now have an appreciation because of exposure.
Yeah, Tamara, go ahead.
Yes, but because the tools are one thing. The tools are not what make you and Bill valuable.
Amen.
What makes you and Bill valuable as editors is your ability to tell story, because
Amen.
that is the value of an editor. The tools that they use are not nearly as important as taking the stuff that gets sent to you and making it into a story that is watchable. So I'm I'm not going to say AI is not replacing editors yet. AI is not replacing everyone yet. I do think that there's a bigger societal interesting thing to think about too, is that the reason these things are so interesting is because, and they're so far reaching, is that there's an audience for them. We are exhausted. And when you watch TikTok, you're not sitting there watching it to get the story out of it. You're watching it because, and there are stories that draw you in, but it's also mindless. You can watch 2 seconds and scroll and watch 2 seconds and scroll and watch 2 seconds and scroll. So I do think that if we spent time cultivating audiences in other areas, then I still have faith that storytelling and that editors are going to be valuable.
Will you ever be able to compete with that guy with the parasail who jumps off the office building in the 29-second video that is brilliantly, I mean, it's just like I stop and watch that because I've never seen that before. I don't know if it's AI or not AI. I just know that feeding that impulse and that brain triggering thing, we'll get more and more of that and less of thoughtful, nuanced ideas.
I'm
and
not
it's
sure
kind
I
of
agree with
like
that, Bill. I'm not sure I agree because long-form podcast, especially in politics and news, long-form content is really, I think I don't know if it's making a comeback, but it seems to be booming now. I mean, if you just look at the impact that, Joe Rogan's podcast has had in the past
people are craving that.
number of months.
Yeah.
I agree with him or not, he's got a 3-hour podcast that people are tuning into and listening to. And there's depth.
He does, but I wonder if that comes anywhere near the number of hours people are consuming those TikTok videos and those
Fair enough.
shorts.
Yes.
But are they consuming those TikTok videos for longevity, or are they just passing knowledge? We get thousands and thousands of things thrown at us every single day, and our brain dumps most of it. So
is that any different, though, from us going home and somebody watching soap operas after work? I mean, or whatever their content of choice was. It was just churned out. I just want to sit back, feed me something that's interesting-ish, and let me veg out.
I had to turn off
Heroes, yeah.
I had to turn off Clarkson Farm because the last episode, spoiler alert, was a lot of failure in a true Jeremy Clarkson kind of way. And my wife says, "This is making me too anxious. It's not entertaining. I just want to be entertained." So we went over to some cooking show or something.
How many people are turning off politics for that? I'm just tired of watching these people argue and spew. I'm tired of it. I don't even want to look at it.
But I think that's one of the reasons that people are turning towards this other media, because they are tired of what the world is producing for them.
And my guess is Joe Rogan is wallpaper. It's audio, video wallpaper. It's on. Yeah. Do people perceive, comprehend, ingest all of those 3 hours? Tony's going to tell us.
CNN used to be like that.
Yeah, interesting. No, wait, I need to say something about CNN. Hold on, Tony. I need to say something about CNN. Right, left, middle, I don't care. But not everything is breaking news.
Correct.
But they have a
Never
lovely
was.
graphic.
Just
If we
stop.
paid for it, we have to
Just
use it.
stop. It's so annoying to me. Literally
It's
24
just-
hours a day, it's breaking news.
It's
I know.
June-mageddon.
Oh my God, it
But
drives
pe-
me
people,
bananas.
that's part of the TV business because we used to do it too because they understand that after survey, people watch for 7 minutes and then they go away and
Yeah.
do something else. And
Oh,
they
it
come in and
drives
watch
me
for 7
berserk.
minutes.
I
And if
can't
you don't
stand
get the breaking news banner in those 7 minutes, they're going to turn to some other station.
Unbelievable. Tony,
And now
all
it's 14
you.
seconds.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, got it.
No, I just wanted to add that as we were saying that people get turned off and not want to listen to the news and the politics. And I just want to say that might be the point. That might be the point, that they want you to get tired. They want you to get frustrated. They want you to give up and not pay attention to what's being done. I just wanted to lift that up. I thought that was an important.
No, it's a
I don't
really
disagree at all,
lift
Tony.
up.
Yeah, it's
They
very
want you to buy
interesting, right?
something.
If you
They
throw
want-
enough
they need
stuff
you to-
out there, then people will, yeah, they'll stop paying attention. I also just want to mention that I'm Fatness writes, people are listening to Rogan and paying attention. I hear about guests all the time at the office. And, I heard about, he just had Bernie Sanders on. Now, I don't listen to this guy. I don't listen to Joe Rogan. But he just had Bernie Sanders on. That, and that made news. That was a really big deal that these two.
Because the PR firm promoted it.
I don't care how it's getting out there. It's working. It's working. Okay.
It's
Sky. We're here for
David.
you. We're here for you.
Help?
Don't
This is-
worry.
this-
it's
is
okay, Sky.
Is it? Is it? Because my question
It's-
is
It's group therapy. We're all in it together.
this 12 steps will be like the monkeys that Dave talked about earlier. We still won't get Shakespeare. But who wants to control your life? What tools do you choose to have digital assistants do? And do you have more than one? That's kind of my question to the community here was, and how much would a digital assistant cost if you had them do what you want them to do now? How much would that have cost you last year? So how has tech made your life better?
I don't
But
have
there's a ton of things in the production world that it does make easier, and Michael Cioni talked about that in one of his things about the difference between utility AI that's there to help you do tasks and generative AI that is supposed to be creating things for you. And I think utility is going to be bigger, and it's going to help a lot of us, because if you can get something to format text and those drudgery kinds of things.
And what are you doing? What tool are you using in a small way? Who is your digital assistant?
I would argue that every keyboard shortcut I use is that kind of technical utility AI. And when it's doing word prediction and saying, you type the first 4 words or first 4 letters of a long term, and it realizes you use that a lot and it does it for you. That is the perfect example of utility AI that saves you micro moments of time and makes you easier. It gets your work done easier. So I'm all for that stuff. It's when you switch over that I get in trouble.
I love the terminology, Bill, that you just used about utility AI versus generative. That I've never heard the term utility. I hear about agentic AI all the time, but I like actually utility much better. So I think it was last week I showed this new the new browser, the Dia browser, right, which has AI baked into it. And so if I just hit a hotkey, these are our show notes, and if I just hit a hotkey, it opens up on the left here, and I can ask a question. What is the main topic of this week's show? It can see what's in my browser. It will then give me the answer. And more than that, I can ask it to rework something, and then it will give me an insert button. I can insert in here. This, to me, I think is meant to be what you just described, utilitarian. The thinking from Dia, I believe, is we do most of our work in a browser, and so the AI should be where you're working. You shouldn't have to juggle between tabs. I will say it's not there yet. For me, the closest thing that I have to an AI agent or helper is still OpenAI. It's still ChatGPT.
The danger there is what somebody was talking about PowerPoint, and there was somebody, and I can't remember who it was, it might have been Tufty or one of those big brains, who said,
oh yeah, Tufty it was.
He thinks that part of the reason the Challenger blew up might have been PowerPoint, and not that it's a bad tool at all, but that in taking ideas and cramming them down into what's on the slide and only discussing what's on the slide instead of thinking outside of the slides and saying what else could happen other than the agenda of today's meeting, that might have led to them missing things. And so I worry about that in terms of generative AI, this kind of thing, exactly what you're talking about, David, allowing the machine to reduce the focus of me and always asking, is this the right focus, or is there something outside of this summary, which I love, that could be dangerous? I just want to keep the question out there. I don't know the answer.
The astronauts that died on the launch pad in the Senate hearing, the NASA person in front of the Senate said, well, unfortunately, we didn't have enough imagination. To your point, Bill, is you got to think outside the box. You got to think that Velcro could potentially get sparked and catch on fire, and then these astronauts and all the engineering and everything that passed because, well, that what if? And then again, this is back to the lawyers that think so far ahead, the imagination that thinks so far ahead. So yeah, there's a balance, but this is where my question that inspired me to type this in our group chat is, I realized I need something other. I need an assistant. I could use an assistant. I believe I could be effective without doing some of these mundane routine things because I can't spell, being a dyslexic, et cetera. So consequently, to do more than just ask a question of a chat.
So I want to offer a warning from YouTube, actually, and I'm not sure, it's from iAmFatness. I'm not sure that this is what you meant, but this is how I'm reading it. And I think it's really fascinating. He says, I've built several Gen AI systems for process automation. When your clients have several interactions with similar processes, they want unique experiences. What's fascinating to me about that is that a lot of generative AI feels the same. You can,
Absolutely.
It's sort of like with a Notebook LM. You know it's a Notebook LM because they start everyone with, all right, it's a deep dive, right, or whatever it is. And that's having tools that can not only serve as utilities but create unique experiences is a really interesting piece of the AI journey that
isn't its function idea to average toward the center.
Yeah.
You get a large language model, you survey instantaneously all this data, and then you figure out trends, which is removing the outliers and coming toward the center. And that may be not the...
And this is where wisdom will be the unique experience. And this is where Bill and Dave and Tamara and Tony and David have the ability to use the wisdom and let the tools do the mundane or utilitarian of a thing. And so this is where wisdom comes first. And I do feel better. I didn't know I felt bad. Thanks for the shame.
Yeah, no shame. But Vic in YouTube is actually pointing us right back to where we need to go, and that is he says, acknowledging that. Let me pull it up for us. Acknowledging that info access is not equitable. Should we consider some type of self limitations? Do we leash AI? So let's talk about this. Let's take that step back. And again, I every week that we've been talking about this, one of the things that I've had my share of struggles in my life, just like everyone has. But I am one of the most blessed people. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Despite the things that I have gone through. I'm so lucky, so lucky. And every time we talk about all the things that we talk about, it's so vital that we remember how lucky we are to have this access, to have, I'm not sure if I want to call these first world problems, when I complain about Zoom going down or my mic is too low or whatever. But there's just, it's so important to take this necessary step back and talk about internet infrastructure, equity and access, that so much of what we're talking about is not easily accessible to lots of people. And I'm not talking about in Kenya. I'm talking about in the United States of America and in Kenya, both. So 5.5 billion people use the internet, 68% of the world, which leaves about 2.6 billion people offline. And that growth you would expect in most of technology, we see these huge. I never did well in math, but when it goes, exponential growth, right? That is slowing. In the least developed countries, we're not seeing that profound growth anymore. In Africa, only 37% of the population is online versus 90% across Europe and the Americas. In the United States, 95% out of 110 million serviceable locations have access to, meaning they could buy if they wanted to, 100 over 20 fixed service, 100 megabits up,
Megabits, I think.
megabits up, and 20, right, the other way around. It's 100 down and 20 up. 80% of adults subscribe to home broadband. There are still places, as of at least a year or two ago, 7.2 million locations throughout the United States that don't have high-speed options. And what was most stunning to me is that the problem is not infrastructure, at least not all by itself. The much bigger problem is affordability. We have had plans very recently to address infrastructure issues, getting fiber and treating it as a utility. Speaking of utilitarian AI, treating it as a utility, like the phone or like water.
Electricity.
Right. So that's just a little bit setting the stage. What do you see as the essential crisis or the essential problem, the essential challenge that we're facing when it comes to equity and access around infrastructure? Sky, go for it.
As you started giving me those statistics, I started to think, is that a bad thing? Again, the equity, because what's the difference between a right and a privilege? And to be able to drive a car in the United States is a privilege, not a right. And consequently, I'm actually reading books now that are talking about parenting your mobile device and putting it in a drawer at 8 o'clock at night so that you can get your life back. Now, if people do not have access to this knowledge that we've been talking about, then yes, that is inequity. I do agree. But as the quality of life, I'm starting to realize is I'm struggling.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit on that, Sky, and I would suggest that I'm all for, it may be better long term for our health and our mental well-being to not have 24-hour access to these tools. Having said that, allowing some people, those who have money, to make the decision whether or not to use them, and to not give the same option to people who
Right.
perhaps have less money is just, that's not our decision to make for them. But you the way you framed it was really interesting, Sky.
I struggle.
Is it a right? Is the internet access
or a
to the
privilege.
internet, high-speed access to the, is that a right or is that a privilege?
Knowledge, I think, is now. Oh, I lit up the room. Go.
Dave, go ahead.
Dave, go.
It's a cultural thing, folks. It's cultural. In the UK, for a very, very long time, until up about the 90s, you had to have a license to own a TV. That is, you paid yearly for the privilege. You didn't have a right to it. You had the privilege. In the Netherlands,
But
you
isn't
can
that
get
still the case?
high-speed internet.
Wait, Dave,
No,
isn't
they
that still
gave
the
it up.
case?
No, during the Thatcher rule, they took out the licensing. So
No. But as
and
far
now,
you mean,
now
but
they have
having a
satellite
TV,
and all the rest.
you have to pay to
Yeah.
have a TV. I mean that.
Yeah, you had to pay before. There's a license for having a television. Yes.
Right, but you still have to pay to have a TV, isn't that? If you call it a license?
No,
or
you
not?
pay
To
once
watch
to own
it.
a TV, but
There
to
were
hook
vans,
it up and
vans
see
that went
the-
around and gave you a traffic ticket
Yeah.
if you were watching TV and didn't have a license.
Really?
I lived in
Yeah.
I lived in England during that time, and we were under the radar.
Yeah. Like people stealing cable. But that's beside the point. In the Netherlands, they decided to take over the infrastructure, and the government wired everybody up because it was rather difficult to do. If you've been to the Netherlands, you could know how hard infrastructure is. And your internet is $15 a month. So it's a cultural thing. In Canada, we were the first to put up a communication satellite for domestic use. And it was to provide phone service to the north. Above 60, nobody had a phone. And they gave them a phone. This goes back to, is it a utility? The second satellite that went up was to give them television, which actually changed their culture entirely and nearly killed them all. Other satellites have been put up since to be able to share signals back and forth from coast to coast to coast. And now we're sharing data coast to coast to coast. So my country says, and my province here, wired up every town and city in the whole province. That's about 200 locations, and gave them fiber. And it's not on the internet. It's government fiber. And it's used for government services and for government content. The courts are all on it, the health service, the education service. A lot of stuff is going on just for the government. They hold whole meetings with their ministers, and everybody's in far-flung places. Alberta is about twice the size of Texas. Saskatchewan next to us is the same size. Manitoba next, BC on the other side. We're all bigger than Texas. So our distances are enormous, and we have to do things like satellite or long-term fiber. So I think you guys down there have this ethic of a guy should be able to get what he got for helping, and he's not helping everybody, and you don't care. And I'm going, you should care. The government should care. The Cox Cable or other cable companies are not providing to the rural areas the kind of bandwidth you would get in Spokane. And this is a problem just in cultural terms, because Africa, I mean, we know Rwanda as a government said everybody should be able to have internet. So that's what they did. Now, I don't see why America can't do that. Somebody explain it to me.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that ethic of a guy is rich because he had a great idea and he wouldn't share it with anybody.
Tamara.
I have a little bit of a different context. We're talking a lot about everybody should have this device and that device and this device. I wanted to give you an example of why it's important that everybody has access. And I'm going to use two cities, Los Angeles and New York, places that are wired, that people have access. I did my student teaching in East LA and South Central LA. So high gang areas, low income areas. I worked in New York in the Bronx, in the South Bronx. So I've worked in two different communities. And then I also worked for a school that was a private international boarding school in New York City that cost $96,000 to attend. So I got to see what it means when people have access to different kinds of technology. It isn't just about the devices. It isn't just that my kids were getting Chromebooks versus iPads, or versus, at the high-end school, you came in, we gave you a computer. At a low-end school, we maybe gave you a Chromebook, because we were like, it's very important for people to have access to and to understand these things. What I think we're forgetting is that if you are raised using technology, your point of reference to the world isn't just, oh, I can look things up quickly, or I can do these things that I can do with the digital world. You are at a disadvantage of functioning intellectually in 2025 if you do not have not only the tools, but good tools, fast tools, the same tools that you're seeing in richer areas. So I'm not talking about rural areas. Everyone has to have access, and they have to have access in a more equal way, because what some of my students were lacking wasn't just a good computer. It was the knowledge and the skills and the intellectual capabilities that come with having that technology. We hang out with a bunch of smart people who are not just, they have computers, but they're able to intellectualize in ways that the average person can't. And that's all of our friends at office hours, all of our friends. We have these conversations every day. And it's not just about what cable goes to this. It's about the ability to problem solve and to reason and to figure things out and to try things and break them and fix them again. And so not having access is part of that.
Can I throw a monkey wrench into this? So here's my problem. You give young Bill and young Cindy, who lives next door, a box of crayons. Cindy is going to kill with that. She's going to be making posters, and she's going to be drawing faces, and she's going to be starting her career as an artist for all we know, because she's fabulous. Bill can barely put out a sign that people can read. The tool does not guarantee the result. Even these brilliant tools, it's more than the tool. And that I think has been one of the hardest parts about me coming to grips with education. My wife was a teacher in the public school system and taught 5th grade. And she worked with the kids who were struggling a lot to try to bring them to the median. And she tried not to completely ignore those stars who are going to run off with every concept and do fabulously. And so it's not just wiring them all up. It's trying to figure out how to maximize what the result of that wiring does for all those individual personalities that are not the same. Just like me and the crayons and the girl next door with the crayons. We're not the same. And I don't know how to square this or square the circle or whatever.
No, I agree with that. But I also agree that I would fight just as hard to make sure that Bill got art lessons. Just because Bill,
of course you would.
You know what I'm saying? Because
but Bill's never going to make a living at art. Bill's just not.
And I've seen very bad technology rollouts in education. I've seen incredibly bad technology rollouts where expensive schools put a lot of money into things and then didn't do anything with them. So you're right.
I just don't want people to think the wire is the answer, because the wire's part of the answer, and not having the wire certainly is going to suppress young Tony, who could be fabulous if he got the resources, but might not. And we all want to fight against that.
There's a debate going on over on YouTube about whether this is public, whether the issue is public versus private. Right? Is this a public responsibility, or is this an opportunity for private work? So for example, let me bring up some of what people have been saying.
Well, I'll just come down on public, and then
you're going to come down on public. All right, hold on a second. So, Vic says that T-Mobile is launching satellite service. First product will be unlimited SMS and MMS included for existing customers, $10 a month for non-customers. That starts in July. Data available after that. Aaron talks about gatekeeping. And a dumb pipe is much more valuable than a walled garden. So is this an issue of private versus public?
Yeah. If you have the wire, you can decide, like Bill, whether you're going to use crayons or not. And if you don't have the wire, you never find out.
Yeah. Right. Tony, go ahead.
I'm struggling.
We believe in you.
Well, I want to push back a little bit on what Bill said about the crayons. I think the important thing is that little Bill still gets the crayon. And unfortunately, there are too many bills that are not getting the crayon. The other thing that I want to say is that in getting the crayon, Bill may not create that piece of art at the same time that Cindy does. It may take him longer to be creative. And I can say that because Tony Mobley was a horrible student in grammar school. But when Tony Mobley graduated from middle school, he had the third highest GPA score. Sometimes it takes people longer to blossom. But the important thing is that they have the tools and the exposure. You can take things, if you have the exposure, that it may not develop any fruit while you are living. But that fruit, and what I'm speaking about is a teacher, an educator that's giving in to a student. They may never see the fruit that their lessons or instruction or them giving the person the idea to be creative and to think outside of the box. They may never see it. But the important part is that they get the exposure to it. One of the major discrepancies that I see, and this is Tony talking, is that when you look at, and this is a generalization, if you look at those who have and those who don't, those that have may be inspired to make sure that their child has exposure to everything, whether or not they choose to use it or not. The person who does not have access does not have the opportunity to have that same experience. So there is no exposure to draw from. But I will say that in spite of certain circumstances, some of those people who are at a deficit in terms of experience and exposure rise to the top anyway. And this is, I guess, my last point. I think that when we can have a meaningful conversation about this, and we can throw ideas back and forth about it, but really it comes down to greed. And this is why I say that it comes down to greed. You have certain communities in the United States that are extremely wealthy. And what they don't mind doing is having their curb torn up so that fiber can be put in place. I'm fortunate that I live in one of those communities where that was done. But there are other communities where there is copper that's in place, and the company that has provided that copper wants to continue to make money. So they go to the legislatures or the city council or whoever the officials happen to be in that particular area, and they will say, we will do what we need to do for you to continue to only have copper in this location. And these can be in the same city. But, and I'm generalizing, I'm generalizing. I want to be clear that I'm generalizing. The issue becomes that those people who are, for lack of a better word, landlocked with that copper situation, there's a limitation to what they are able to do. Not only that, with copper, you are sharing at the node. So that means that if all of your neighbors are on all at the same time, it brings down the broadband. So my final thing is this. All of this, in my opinion, comes down to greed. It is not at this time profitable enough that we do in the United States like is being done in Canada and other places, because there are people who are making money with things as they are.
Insane.
Well, it is greed, isn't it? I mean, it's just straight up facts of the life. If you have greedy people, they're going to convince councils. And we had a few up here that were constantly in front of city council saying, we want this, and they can't have that. And that was just untenable to me. I just couldn't believe it. But they still
Is there a
that.
place though for the cost benefit ratio? And I'm
no,
off the
cost
top of my
benefit.
head.
That's
Well, I'm
market
just saying,
talk.
how
I
many
mean,
more concert pianists we would have gotten if we had put concert grands in all the kids' music classrooms? We may have a lot more, because it seems to me that every concert pianist I've ever seen came from a very upper middle class background, because they were the only one who had that fine instrument to play on. And we know that there were probably generations.
Quincy
of
Jones
young,
would argue with you on that one.
Well, in his era, we now had keyboards and things like that you can play. Pianos were a very, very upper class kind of an instrument for generations. So that's kind of, and I'm not arguing for this. I'm suggesting that the difference in infrastructure and the rest of that, the cost, I mean, people are saying the telephone lines went first. We put the low-speed copper internet on top of it because it was already there. Now we're facing a different thing, and we're having to tear up everything to regenerate and do this. And we all want it. We particularly all want it for our kids. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of places that are going to get left behind in this era when it's so critical to have access to high speed in order to live an optimized life in terms of learning and everything else.
But it's not even
Have you seen the rooftops of Jordan? In Damascus there, when you look at the rooftops, there's a satellite dish on every roof because they can't put infrastructure under the ground. They just can't.
Yeah, there are ways to do it. I agree with you.
If we gave away satellite dishes and you could tune in any satellite that was up there and learn what you want to learn from Africa or from Japan, go for it. And nobody should have a meter between you and that information.
Isn't that what Starlink is trying to do?
Oh, yeah. And this is another thing that I rail against is he wants to own the sky. Right. And I'm sorry, it's not his sky. And we used to have broadcasters who had...
It's not his sky, but he's the one footing the bill to send the satellites up.
Yeah, littering
you send a satellite up there, and then you can start, saying it's my sky.
No.
But it's not even an optimized life. So I went to the DMV to take my mom to get her renew her license. And as of June 1st, in the state of California, the DMV will no longer, in office, renew licenses. They won't do your registration. They won't pull your records. The only way to do that is through the internet first. So there's services that you cannot get in person anymore, the old-fashioned way. So we're not even talking about an optimized life. We're talking about life just in general. There's so many things that you just cannot even do. Just at
banks
the base
requiring
level.
A phone so that you could verify with second factor. Yeah. And what for people who don't have phones, which is my sister, she has to go down to the bank to do her stuff.
And less things are being able to be done in person.
And in the qualifications of all of this, I think, Dave, you mentioned the reference to the monkeys, and that is a reference to 1,000 monkeys on 1,000 typewriters. still could not create Shakespeare. Well, the quote that follows that up is the internet has proven that true.
Nobody's writing Shakespeare today. Yes, yeah. Some people are making some great music and having great TikTok time, but I don't know. I don't know where the creativity is going, and that'll be the most valuable thing in the future. We talked before about critical thinking, but I think creative thinking is going to be the most valuable thing, and the person who has creative ideas is going to stand out amongst all the slop.
And
Who here has sent or
delineation.
received a snail mail letter in the past month?
I get bills.
Two
in the
hands
mail.
out of the pen. Well, yeah, non-automated, computer-generated.
Actually, you
I'm
know
saying
what?
sent or received a personal piece of correspondence
I actually sent
via
something,
the mail.
I put something in the mail today, but
Yes.
it was I had to send something to a lawyer, and they have fax machines or snail mail, and I don't have a fax machine. So
I'm just saying, how long before that goes the way of slide rules? I mean, when was the last time anybody bought a slide rule? They just didn't.
Minutes.
So we know that that society passes along through technologies, leaves the old one behind. There are always people, and I am one of them, who have some classic pieces of technology on their wall behind me that I adore because they meant something to me in my life, but I know their time has gone. And so how at the speed that things are changing now, I don't think there's one of us on this panel who would go back to life without 75 to 80% of the technology we have now willingly.
right.
We just wouldn't do it.
So look. Okay. So let's
That
look.
makes it a utility.
Let's
right?
look
That
future.
means
Yeah, that's the
live without
utility.
it,
So
right?
wait, but
Can
let's
we
talk
live
about
without it?
utilities,
No.
and let's look into the future. So, should we be emphasizing fast deployment, fast rollout, make sure everyone has it, even if it isn't as good as it could be, or do we future-proof what we're rolling out? Do we make sure, for example, that the fiber routes are hardened, satellite ground stations are hardened against fires and storms and floods and things like that? Is this about get everyone access even if it isn't optimized access? Or is this let's take our time here, let's do it right, and let's roll it out more slowly? Dave.
I'm fascinated with Dave's thing, though, about the government's limiting the menu of choices to municipal types of things. Do we really want this high speed full of people playing World of Warcraft all day long? And will that cause more social ills than not? I'm just fascinated with what you said, Dave.
Yeah, well, it's just the government recognized that the internet itself was going to be a business, and they needed to be outside that business. They need to be able to have confidential conversations. They do online psychology. They have consultations between, criminals and the people they're not allowed to be in the same room with. And they can do these meetings, and it's all encrypted. So nobody can touch it. And you could break the fiber by taking an axe to it, but nobody wants to. And anybody in the city or the town or even in some of our hamlets can do any more than go down to the local library or a government office and sit down at a computer and access what they need, everything they need, like DMV. They can get it. All our libraries across the whole province have computer rooms, free of charge. You just sit down if there's one available, and you get an hour and a half on it. And if somebody's standing in line, you have to go. You have to finish what you're doing. You can't just watch TV on it. And this is a cultural thing. We accept that these are public utilities. The library is a public utility. How did that happen? Well, in the States, it was Carnegie who had enough money to put libraries all over the world. I was in Europe and I was in Austria, and I was looking for a library in the town. It's a 65,000 person town. And they looked at me funny, like, no, the church has a library, but there's no public library here. What are you talking about? So.
No.
Yes, but your country also gives health care to people.
And that's a right too, right?
Don't tell
You
them.
also
Insurance
assign-
companies will come after you.
There's no profit in that, right? So there's no middleman taking away something from one person to give it to the other.
Right.
Just not right.
By the way, is my driving my mute switch? I think
Your
is
dog?
broken, so I think you're hearing Charlie through this, and I
That's
apologize.
okay.
Charlie
it's not
is always
overtaking
welcome.
you at all. Yes.
Charlie's
Charlie's
always welcome.
Buckminster Fuller said that if we had a copper wire big enough, we could put it around the entire world connect everybody to it, and they wouldn't need any more power plants because the turning of the earth generates enough electricity for the entire planet. The problem of doing that is getting everyone to agree politically, and secondly, to get the meters off the cable. Like, turn the meters off and just let people have it for free.
What do you think about, so you brought up the geopolitical piece of this. Do richer countries have a responsibility to ensure that poorer countries have equity of access? Right? Should America, I mean, look, the America First folks would argue, and I'm not sure that they're wrong, that we have people in our own country who still don't have equity of access.
Exactly. Take care of your own first.
But let's pretend like we're addressing that, which we won't, but let's pretend like we're addressing that. Should America, look, we're really good at dropping bombs. Should we also be as good at building up internet infrastructure in places that don't have
it?
Is
well,
that
that's what the Chinese are doing?
But they're doing it for
they're
themselves.
Going into places no, they do it in Africa, and they do it in Lower Europe and Eastern Europe. They put in a wire, and then they own you.
Yeah.
And then they own you. What do you mean?
Well, their culture goes into your neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
And they're building soccer stadiums and introducing people to, they love their.
So this is soft diplomacy. You mean they're using this as soft diplomacy?
Soft diplomacy.
Soft
yeah, like you're describing. And it's like U.S. aid, only it's Chinese aid.
So that doesn't, I mean, that answers the question of from a political perspective, why it might be good policy to do this. But do we have an ethical obligation? I guess what I'm trying to get at is
oh, you certainly do.
Has technology changed enough and become vital enough that it is now an ethical obligation to ensure that everybody has access?
Absolutely. If it's going to be a requirement of life, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I always thought it was a safety concern too, because if my neighborhood is safe, but the neighborhood 3 blocks over isn't safe, and there are people who get upset with that circumstance, they're going to eventually come to my neighborhood looking for the things they don't have. So by helping the world achieve a certain standard of living, stopping the spreads of diseases and things like that, you're really protecting yourself. At the same time, you are altruistically helping other people have a better quality of life.
Just like public health, yes.
Yeah. Sky, you want to jump in?
And the thought that came to mind is, why do we have interstate freeways? And and again, you go back to Germany, because the Autobahn was created to move military machineries. So I think around the 50s is when the interstate system was put in play here, and it's just now.
That was the Alaska Highway. The Alaska Highway was built to move machine and material north. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a way of creating a utility / a for the greater good construct, and corporate people get behind it because they get the contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are ways to do this, but you got to have a bigger mindset and a longer game attitude versus the short. Again, to Tony's point,
the quarterly return. Yeah.
The greed of, I only get my job because, I did good this last 6 weeks.
Having said
we
that,
talked earlier about some parts not growing, and growing is not the only.
Having said that, Aaron is pointing out that we've built lots of internet infrastructure all over the place, and there are insane economic benefits to doing it, even if it's NGOs. So, I mean, maybe the argument that we should be making is, you could make a lot of money by giving people access to internet infrastructure. To what degree do we separate ethics from the current state of affairs? Ethics don't seem to drive much of anything anymore, assuming they ever did. Yeah, that's a fair argument.
Well, they used to. No, we had
but anymore, I'm not sure that they do.
No, sorry, but all scientists have an ethical obligation to do the right thing. Every doctor swears an oath to it. Lawyers swear oaths to never cheat on their clients, which, of course, yeah. But it's all part of ethics, and if you don't have ethics, you got no professions at all.
Yeah,
I will say my wife. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave, please.
Well, I was just going to say, my wife spent a piece of her last couple of months working with a bunch of younger people, and she came away shockingly surprised at the level of everything that those young people who are working. This is a hard job. This was a physical, day-to-day working thing, and she was surprised at how many of her coworkers who were in their mid to late teens, early 20s, and beyond were talking about all the things you would hope those kids would be talking about. You know, their investment plans for the future, their morality, and how to do things correctly. It was a lovely glance into a culture that I left 40, 50 years ago. But to have her come back and say these hardworking kids are doing okay, they're not all falling by the wayside. Now, sure, there are plenty who are, but that's been true since the dawn of time, I think. And so the question is, how do you not get too cynical about what all these effects are having on the youth of today, which is, of course, not a monolithic block, but it was just nice to hear. Nice to hear.
Nice. Tamara, do you want to jump in? I thought I saw you before.
No, I've had similar experiences like that. I think that some of what we were talking about is a shared, as a community, value in certain things. So part of me was when we talked about, like, should we go into other places? Yes, if that's something they're interested in.
Right.
It is. So I think that's one of, we've long gone into places and colonized in areas that we don't belong in. So I do think that there's also that.
Yeah, I absolutely did not mean to suggest that we should force people.
No, I know you didn't, and it occurred to me. I was like, well,
no, that's
some
a really.
places I think are perfectly, as a community, pretty happy not to have that connection.
And we've also gone
which
in
brings
with
us back
with
to
a
Sky,
clear,
what you said before, right? That maybe people will choose that they don't want this access, and that's we have to honor that.
Well, I'm not saying, but they need to have the opportunity,
Right.
because that is the way of the world.
The key word is
today,
access.
just like the Amish still ride their horse and buggy on a paved road, so they take advantage of technology, even though they choose to still live a humble life and
Did you see
humble
the
lifestyle.
video? Do you see the video of
The next point I want to quick make, and then you can tell your video, is, again, I continue to your question earlier about where do we start? Well, in the airplane, they say when the air comes down, put the oxygen mask on first so that you can be helpful to someone else.
Yeah.
So now tell me about your video, David.
No, sorry. There was a video of a group of an Amish community moving a barn. They all just got around just lifted. It was a fantastic video. They just They didn't need any technology. They just lifted the damn barn up and moved it. It was fantastic.
My bad hearing. I thought you said mooning a barn. I thought
no,
I've
they
never
were not
seen
mooning
an Amish.
a barn. Oh my God. This was a really, really important conversation for us to have. And I hope that
Tony's got the last word. He's ready.
Oh, is he ready?
He's
all right,
queued
I'm
up.
coming to you, Tony. I'll just say that we had invited Alex Lindsay to be on because he has really unique experience working and bringing internet infrastructure to particularly third world countries and bringing access. So we'll have him come on and join us. He wasn't available tonight. We'll have him join us another night, and we'll definitely keep talking about this because it really is vital. And I don't ever want to.
Aaron Huslage brought it. Go,
yes.
Aaron.
So, really, really grateful to Aaron and Vic, and in fact, and Lois is in there, and Sky is in there, and everyone who's been commenting. I saw, who else did I see in here? I saw a bunch of people. Really rich conversation happening over in YouTube. Really grateful for that. All right, Tony, I'm giving you the last word. Then I'm gonna try and get people to watch us next week. Go ahead.
Well, I think I'll end with this. I am a Trekkie. And part of the reason that I'm a Trekkie is because I see hope in the future in that fiction. There's hope in that fiction. And in that fiction, one of the stories was that there was a technology that was needed in order to save the universe. And the technology was developed in Kenya. And so it sparked something in me, in that I think that by not, and I'm speaking, I think this is a world thing, but I think even just for the United States, think about the different things that diseases and health crises and things that we have going on in the world. It may be that one low income little fellow who had exposure to a microscope and was able to utilize the internet to create an opportunity for learning and development and creation. And he is able to, as an adult, save us from cancer or something else that right now does not have a cure. So in some sense, by not being open-minded enough to not shoot ourselves in the foot, by making it difficult to bring up the entire society and just a few, we are hurting ourselves. And I'm going to end with this. I'm so thankful that a domestic who did not decide that she was going to be limited by her position, who listened to those people who employed her and told her not to limit herself by her circumstances, who made it her business to expose her children to things that they were not supposed to be exposed to go to places outside of their block, to travel to New York and see plays, even though they didn't understand what was happening in the play. I'm thankful for that domestic who understood that she did not have to stay in that position, and that she was able, before she passed, to be an agent for the Internal Revenue Service after going to college. What I'm saying is that the United States is doing its disservice by not developing as many of their people as they can.
Amen. Beautifully said, Tony. That's why this equity is so vital and so important. Thank you all for being here, for being part of this conversation. Next week, we're talking quantum computing because, I know a lot about quantum computing. We are planning on having someone who actually does know a lot about quantum computing join us. And hopefully lots of our panelists here also. If you want to join our panel, just come visit me. Head over to Discord, pop me an email, anything, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, any of those things. Find me, let me know, run me down, and come on over. Love to have you here. And grateful to everyone who's watching and all of you. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the week, everyone. See you next week on The Rundown. Bye-bye.